ready to start now. Good evening and welcome to Supernatural Suburbs. I'm Mary Beth Gannon, local historian, and I have a strong interest in the strange and mysterious. Who out there doesn't love a great ghost story? Let's go to our first slide right after this one. And I thought I would start with the New Lenox in Frankfurt area first, since this is for the New Lenox Library. A popular spot in the New Lenox area that is rumored to be haunted is at Gauga Road and Route 6. Legend has it that a headless ghost has been seen walking in that vicinity. It's believed the ghost is of a man who lived nearby but had a tragic death. Our next spot is at the Abe Lincoln Motel on Route 30 by Frankfurt. Witnesses have claimed to have seen a ghost of a teenager there. Some other activity reported are televisions and lights going on and off without explanation. Crying has also been heard on site, but no one knows who was crying. Next stop, let's take a look at Sanctuary Golf Course in New Lenox. This is a fairly new golf course. During construction of the course, it was discovered the site was home to several Native American burial sites. And ever since that unearthing, some people have reported hearing screams in the area, as well as strange noises. Frankfurt Cemetery is said to be haunted by the ghost of a woman dressed in white. The unearthly woman has been seen carrying a baby that is crying. It's believed that the ghostly mother is trying to comfort her little one. Next, we're going to look at probably one of my favorite stories. It's not my favorite, but it's up there. 1897 airship from another world. A rash of mysterious airship sightings piqued the curiosity of Americans in the 1800s. In March and April 1897, thousands of Midwestern Americans reported sightings of airships. On April Fool's Day, as many as 10,000 reportedly observed a huge aerial machine flying over Kansas City. Prior to this mass sighting, hundreds of residents of Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, California, and Arizona also reported seeing similar apparitions. The Aurora, Texas UFO incident reportedly occurred on April 17, 1897. And that's about the same time as all these sightings that were happening here. In Aurora, Texas, a UFO reportedly crashed on a farm. The incident is similar to Roswell, which happened about 50 years later. But in 1897, this crash resulted in the death of the airship's pilot. The pilot was said to be not of this world and to be alien. And I mentioned this particular incident because this airship was spotted over Kankakee, Orland Park, in Joliet prior to the Aurora, Texas incident. Strange. Next, we have the strange lights of 1913. Look at this headline from the Joliet Herald News, circa 1913. Residents reported seeing strange lights in the eastern sky. Andrew Wagner of First National Bank said the bright blaze in the sky was not a star or a comet. Wagner also happened to be an astronomer. Another resident speculated that perhaps it was a glow from the mills in Gary, Indiana. But that seems like a bit of a stretch. Next, we're going to keep along our UFO theme for a little bit here. 1947, just 2 weeks, two weeks before the infamous alleged UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico. Kenneth Arnold was flying a small plane on the West Coast when he spotted unidentified objects flying at least 1,200 miles per hour. Just 1 hour later, here in Joliet, Charles Castile, an engineer at the EJ&E Railroad, spotted 9 unidentified objects in Joliet going north to south. Castile said the lead object controlled the others because they all moved in a certain way, and the ones behind it followed in unison. He said he didn't think much of the incident at the time, but he did tell his wife. Arnold estimated the object's speed by watching how long it took them to cross a known distance by the railroad track. An Army rocket expert said the objects Arnold saw could have been jet planes, but who knows? Astronomers near Seattle and Joliet said there was no natural explanation for the reports. Arnold told reporters things were shaped like boomerangs and skipped along much like a tossed saucer might skip across a pond. And that's how we got the name Flying Saucers. Let's go to our next slide. Rockdale Lights. In the mid-1950s, several strange lights were spotted by dozens of residents in Rockdale. I don't have a precise location for this particular one. This was told to me by someone who lived there at that time. Let's go to our next one. Flying saucers? No, just a plane. In 1952, there was a headline in the local paper that read, "Flying saucers, no, just a plane." Bright lights were spotted hovering over the northeast section of Joliet. Police received several calls about the strange, slow-moving lights, which were later claimed to be a plane. It was about this time that my grandfather's close friend who lived in Wilmington said he also saw the strange lights and they looked like flying saucers. So who knows? Let's go to our next one. And this is another story that was told to me by a couple different residents here in Joliet. In 1969, a group of teenagers who were in charge of planning their prom were on their way home when they spotted what they claimed to be a UFO on Black Road near Catherine Street. That's a pretty busy stretch. One of the witnesses said it was not an orb, but it had bright lights going in 2 different directions and that the object was pill-shaped. Witnesses also say it hovered. The teens called police, and there was an article featured in the paper. I'm still trying to find that article. Let's go to our next photo and look at these guys. This is here 70s. This was sent to me. I'm gonna leave the gentleman's name out of it, but he sent me this photo of himself. We'll just call him John. John would pick up his then girlfriend in the late 1970s every night. He'd pick her up from work and he'd go to dinner at his apartment. And one night he was by an apartment complex in Crest Hill when the couple saw what they thought was a helicopter at first. They were not far from state though when this happened. And at the time they thought maybe it's an escaped criminal. The couple sat in their car and watched the light, which kept getting closer and closer. They then realized it wasn't a helicopter. It had a huge laser beam of light with a cylindrical dome on top and rotating lights. It got 100 yards from them, but made no sound. It then flew very slowly away, still not making any noise, and then it just suddenly shot away. Next slide. Mokena UFO. A couple years ago, an unidentified flying object was spotted flying over the Terra Hills subdivision. It was said to be flying low at a slow and steady pace. The incident was reported to the National Reporting Center and to the Mutual UFO Network. So we are going to move on from outer space to the skies. We all hear the phrase about it raining cats and dogs, but what about frogs? That's what happened here in Joliet one Saturday afternoon in 1906. Hundreds of frogs rained down on the neighborhood near 3 Points. That was by South Chicago Street. It's speculated that a big gust of wind swept the frogs up into the sky and made them rain down below. Next, we're going to talk about our prison here. Lots of different ghost stories are associated with the Joliet prison, including Monkey Hill Cemetery. This was a cemetery where inmates from Joliet Correctional were buried. In 1932, the cemetery garnered national attention when an alleged ghost was reportedly giving a nightly singing performance. The site was already the subject of hauntings, with reported spotting of a ghostly soldier in uniform, as well as sightings of a white mist floating among the headstones. All right, Odette Allen, probably one of the best known alleged ghosts associated with Joliet Correctional is Odette Allen. Odette was the wife of the prison warden. She was murdered there in 1915. It is said that her ghost still haunts the prison grounds. A man nicknamed Chicken Joe Campbell was blamed for the crime, but there's been a lot of doubt in more recent years that he actually did it. Next, we have Anne Odelia Disdabar. Harry Houdini, in his Magician Among the Spirits of 1924, described her as one of the most extraordinary fake mediums and mystery swindlers the world has ever known. She was convicted of fraud in 1888 in New York, and she served 6 months. In 1893, she ended up in Joliet and was convicted of fraud. DeBar, who also used numerous aliases, including a title of Swami. Next, this is a photo. I collect antique photos, and I've had this in my collection probably close to 40 years. I got it from one of our neighbors when I was a child. They had a big box of old photos that belonged to their family, and they were going to pitch them, so I took them. And I noticed these ghostly orbs above the bed. And it's not a double exposure, and these are bona fide orbs. So I'm not going to give their exact name, but they did live over by St. Cyril's on Joliet East Side. Let's go to our next slide. Probably one of the most beautiful homes that was ever in our area was the Higginbotham Estate in the Cherry Hill neighborhood. This land originally belonged to the Potawatomi peoples. Their leader, Chief Shabana, would visit nearby at Gauger Crossing. The Potawatomi were known to be friendly native indigenous people. Chief Shabana was a member of the Ottawa tribe, and he helped protect white settlers here during the 1832 Black Hawk War. And later on, Harlow Higginbotham had this home built on grounds, and it was built by Daniel Burnham, a famous architect, right up there with Frank Lloyd Wright, and he also built Joliet Public Library, but I digress here. Anyway, the Higginbotham family did not stay in this home for a very long time. It became somewhat abandoned, and young people would host parties in the home, which was still furnished when it was not being occupied by the Higginbotham family. And it's during this time that several locals said the home became haunted. The home fell in disrepair and was eventually demolished. Okay, next we have the Scott Mansion, and this is on Broadway in Joliet. Built in 1882, the Scott Mansion was created for Hiram B. Scott, a Civil War veteran and Joliet's first barbed wire manufacturer. Scott held 10 patents for his barbed wire. This nearly 5,000 square foot home is on the National Register of Historic Places and is considered to be one of the more haunted locations in Joliet. Rumor has it that 2 children died in this home as well as 3 of its owners. In 2006, a teen was fatally shot just outside the home. And one of its owners, in more recent years, one of my late friends, Seth Magaski, was working to turn the home into a Victorian life museum when he died suddenly and unexpectedly. The house was later put on the market again, and it was mentioned the house was a bit haunted, so that drew a lot of attention. Many paranormal investigations have since taken place in this home. Visitors have reported noticing cold spots, heavy dark vibes from where the doll room was, and that was up on the 3rd floor. Also, visitors have reported feeling a sudden urge to leave the doll room, which the doll room's not there, but where you can still go to the room. Other people have reported hearing voices, feeling fingers run through their hair, and seeing strange lights and orbs. And those curtains on the right, they're in my old house. Those curtains originally were at the Scott Mansion. I bought them. Let's go to the next one. And 500 Western, this is a Campbell Bates home, and it was built by F.S. Allen. Frank Shaver Allen was also an Egyptologist. This particular home, the lady on the right is my great grandmother. She was the original maid for this home. And this house has kind of always fascinated me. One of the previous owners was said to be a bit eccentric, and he filled the cistern with water so he could have a swimming pool in the basement of the home. In more recent years, about 50 years ago, a doctor was living at the home who was reportedly doing some illegal procedures and also some strange activity at the home. And ever since then, people have said the house is haunted. I used to live across the street from it, and I felt some strange things in it. I knew one of the people who lived there about 10 years ago, and he tragically died. And before he had passed, he also felt the home was haunted. Let's go to the next one. All right, now we're at my house. We're still on Western Avenue in Joliet's Cathedral area, and this is the corner of Western and Prairie. This is the McFarland Mansion. When this home was originally built, 1898, the property took up an entire city block. They had an orchard there, a 3-hole golf course. It was really magnificent, or so I'm told. Property was later subdivided. Over the years, many people have died in my home, including the second owner, prizefighter Pecky McFarland. I've talked to the past couple owners of the home who all said the house was haunted. I kind of took it with a grain of salt because I don't believe everything I hear about hauntings. I always try to keep an open mind about it. But once we moved in, I started noticing things. I could smell roses constantly when I did not have fresh flowers in the house. My children have reported seeing a woman in a wheelchair in the hallway, and we came to find out later that the original owner, she was in a wheelchair in later years. And they've also reported seeing a man walking around. When I'm home alone and the kids are at school, I often hear footsteps, doors open and close. It's something I've kind of gotten used to. Just prior to me buying the house, one of my neighbors had taken a picture of the house with her cell phone, and she happened to enlarge it. And when she enlarged it up on the third floor, those tiny windows up there, she noticed there were two women standing in the window. I can't get this photo to fit in this format like I want, but I did see it. And the detail on these women is incredible. You can see buttons on their blouses. It's really great. Let's go to our next one. So I talked a minute ago about 500 Western, about that house. And this is being built by F.S. Allen. Well, here is Frank Shaver Allen's own house. Frank Shaver Allen was a local Joliet architect. He was born in Galesburg, Illinois, and he built several private homes and public buildings throughout this area. And he enjoyed using our limestone, which you can see with his own home here. And this is on Morgan Street in Joliet. And as I mentioned earlier, my late friend Seth Magaski, he grew up in this home, and his family had reported several encounters, ghostly encounters at this home. One of the things spot this home was a spirit boy, doors slamming on their own, screams, voices, shadowy figures. Very, very spooky. Many people have noticed things at this home. Let's go to the next one. While we're still in the St. Pat's neighborhood of Joliet, this one I call the crying baby of McDonough Street. This home in the St. Pat's neighborhood belongs to a friend of mine. It's been in her family for many years. The house was built in 1889. A baby crying has reportedly been heard in the home, but when you go to look, there's no baby. There's also was a man who hung himself in this home. His ghost reportedly visits the current owners of the home, leaving a dip in their bed when he sits on it. And sometimes he lays in between them on the bed. There's also a spot on the steps where you can get a cold glass. Let's go to our next one. And this is what I call the ghost of South Chicago Street. There was reportedly a ghost at Mrs. Bannon's boarding house on South Chicago Street back in 1882. Mrs. Bannon's boarding house was a hubbub of activity that was blamed on a ghost, but it probably was just a prankster. The ghost would throw coal at the door and stones at the windows. Next, this beautiful old home in Lockport once belonged to Sticks McDonald. It's said from an early age that Sticks scorned organized religion and was more interested in the magical and metaphysical. His first published work, Vital Philosophy, a survey of substance and an exposition of natural religion, reflects the influence of transcendentalism and Swedenborgian teachings. Eventually, he became a leading member in the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light. That was a secret fraternal organization based on the writings of Neoplatonists, I'm gonna try to pronounce this, Trismegistus. Sorry about that. McDonald wrote 3 volumes entitled Hermetic Philosophy, published in 1890, 91, and 93 under the pseudonym of Sticks. He corresponded with a wide circle of occultists from North America, Europe, and Asia. One of McDonald's fellow members of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light was a major influence on occultist legend, Aleister Crowley. McDonald's group reportedly performed rituals in nearby wooded areas in Lockport. Next, we have some Mercury witch balls. These are 19th century Mercury Glass witch balls with their original stands. Each ball has a hook on it so that it can be hung up by a window. The witch balls are supposed to provide protection against evil spirits. These were found in an old home in the Cunningham neighborhood of Joliet during the 1980s, and I still have them today. Next, Rialto. One of the most reportedly haunted spots in our area is the Rialto Square Theater. I personally did not experience anything when I was a board member for the Rialto, but there are plenty of other people who have, and they say they've had many unusual experiences. A ghost nicknamed Vivian has been felt in the dressing room. Some people speculate she may be the ghost of a deceased performer from the theater. Some of the other residential guests include a little boy who was hit by a car. He was reportedly taken inside the Rialto where he died. People have also seen ghosts of a couple in the balcony. The couple supposedly jumped to their death. Let's go to the next one. Another ghost from the associated with the Rialto is Leo Terry, the organist. I've heard through the grapevine that people have felt his presence during practice sessions at the Rialto, and people are known to say hello to Leo when they're there. Next. The old Joliet Catholic High School was the site of a ghost of Father Kellen Ryan. He was born William Ryan in 1939. Ryan earned his undergraduate and graduate degrees in history from St. Bonaventure University. He was ordained a priest in 1965. In 1966, he arrived at Joliet Catholic. Ryan was known as a happy trickster with a good sense of humor. One of his pranks included raising the alarm in the middle of the night. Another time claiming a priest was attacked and in the rectory. So he was always up to something. When the friars went to the rectory, there was no injured priest, but the rectory was decorated for a party. On March 5th, 1972, Ryan went to visit his parents in Chicago. The following morning, he apparently fell asleep while driving back to Joliet. His car went off the road in Lamont, striking a garage, a tree, and then a telephone pole. The car went up in flames. 33-year-old Ryan died in the crash. The day he died, the jukebox in the cafeteria at the school went on by itself. It played, but no record was on the turntable. Ryan was known to often play that jukebox. About 6 months after he died, a staff member at the school saw Ryan's ghost sitting in a rocking chair. The next day, the staff member noticed a newspaper with Father Ryan's obituary on the floor. There have been many sightings of him over a long period of time, but the sightings stopped after the school closed and became the Victory Center. Next, we have the Eastland Tragedy of Chicago, 1915. The Eastland Tragedy claimed a few Joliet lives, including that of William Finn. 844 people were killed in the wreck. Oprah Winfrey's former Harper Studios building is allegedly haunted. That's where the bodies were taken temporarily after the wreckage of the Eastland. And let's go on to the next one. So if you're on Cass Street in Joliet, you might have noticed this building. This is the AOH, which stands for Ancient Order of Hibernians. This was an Irish fraternal organization here, no longer active in Joliet. It helped new immigrants and also helped them get going with politics. And it was a great way to properly meet other Irish singles. Anyway, did you know this building said to be haunted? Upstairs is said to be a ghost who has occupied that spot for a very long time. Next. Okay, the building's no longer there, but this story involves a business not far from Six Corners, the old Alchemy shop. The business was inside a bungalow home. A previous occupant reportedly said that the French doors inside the home would shake. Sometimes the TV would change channels on its own. There was also an old altar found inside an old water closet. Next. All right, this is Marycrest Shopping Center on Jefferson Street in Joliet. This involves myself. My parents would often take us for pizza at Aurelio's when it was owned by the Semino family at Marycrest Shopping Center. In the late 1970s, we were eating there one night when I noticed an old woman sitting by the exit. I heard her say, "Little girl, tell your parents I need a ride home." The only thing was, we were too far away for me to have actually heard her say that. I did, however, tell my parents that the lady over there wants us to give her a ride home. And my mom said, "What lady? There's no one there." It really made me mad at the time because I saw her as clearly as I can see my own hand. When it came time to leave, the lady was still sitting there asking for a ride home. I wanted to help her so badly, but I didn't want to get yelled at again. I pointed to her again and I said, "Please give her a ride home." We got outside the restaurant, and that's when I really got in trouble with my parents. Suddenly, she was there in the parking lot. At that point, my father definitely saw her, and he began running to the car. It took about 20 years, but my mother finally admitted to me that, yes, she saw the lady too. She just didn't want her child to see ghosts. It really upset her. Next one. All right, here we are at the American Institute of Laundering in Joliet. This is South Chicago Street near Interstate 80. It's the American Institute of Laundry. Visitors there have reported to see shadowy figures and other paranormal type experiences. Next, we have the Will County Poor Farm. Traveling west on McDonough Street, not too far from Joliet Junior College, is the Will County Poor Farm. It was in service from 1851 to 1955. It provided shelter to Will County's poor, the orphans, the mentally ill, and the terminally ill. Those who were capable of working would work on the farm, they cook, or do other domestic work. The Will County Poor Farm was somewhere for people to go. It provided good shelter for them. Residents of the poor farm were buried in a cemetery on land near McDonough by Mission. The Joliet Park District has soccer fields near this cemetery right now. Many visitors to this cemetery have reported seeing strange paranormal haunted experiences there. Now we're going to talk about the JJC Fine Arts Theater. Here are some interesting ghostly stories from a friend of mine about the Fine Arts Theater. She worked there for a long time and saw on multiple occasions a woman dressed in white on the audience side of the theater. She thought the woman in white was Native American. The appearance of the woman in white would coincide when students played a Ouija board there. The woman in white would walk back and forth in the theater before suddenly disappearing. My friend also would hear movement in the theater when she was in the prop shop and vice versa. On another occasion, she watched a glass pitcher move by itself and crash to the ground. She doesn't believe any of the spirits at the theater are violent. Next, we're going to talk about the Manor Motel over in Shanahan. There have been some claims of ghost-like activity in the past, but I'm not getting a whole lot of detail on that, so that probably needs a little bit more investigating. Osable Cemetery. Speaking of haunted cemeteries, Osable, Manuka is said to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in the entire area. Orbs, strange myths, and a female ghost who reportedly likes to play pranks have been reported by many visitors to the cemetery. Dollinger Farm. Over in Manuka, one reported haunted spot is the Dollinger Barn. The farm was built before the I&M Canal development. You may want to go to the farm during the day as it is a great pumpkin farm with many family-friendly activities. But the farm is also very close to the cemetery that's haunted. And here's a strange tale. We call it the Mannequin Man. In the middle of the night along Route 52 between Morris and Shorewood, someone I know said that there would appear to be a naked man on the side of the road. A man who reportedly saw him slowed down to confirm that, yes, that's what he was seeing. The naked man would wave and the driver would keep going, finding the whole thing, rather amusing, but not for long. As the driver went down the road, he suddenly heard a strange knocking sound. It was a knocking on his passenger window. When the driver looked, it was the naked man, only his facial features were stiff and not moving, like a mannequin. The driver would increase his speed and the knocking would continue. Eventually, the mannequin man disappeared, but not before waving bye-bye. And let's take a look at our last one. And this is by far one of the most interesting things I have ever found. I found this by accident, by going through some microfilm at our local library. I was looking for one thing and I happened upon this headline, and it dates from about World War I. A skeleton of a giant man found near Morris. So bones were excavated from a gravel pit near a cemetery in Morris. The giant man was said to be more than 7 feet in height. All his bones were twice the average size. And it was speculated that perhaps he was Native American. The farm's still there, the land's still there. Nobody knows what happened to his or her skeleton. It's a great mystery. Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you so much.